Excellent. Thank you, Kruti. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Ema Essen. I'm one of the cultural planners with Steps Public Art, and it's real nice to have you all here on this beautiful day. I just want to share a little bit about what we do at Steps. Here at this organization, we foster dynamic and inclusive communities through public art and creative placemaking. We transform urban spaces into vibrant places through cultural planning, community arts, and artist capacity building programs. This session is part of From Reeds We Grow, which started in 2020. It's an interdisciplinary public art project that aims to encourage exploration and conversation around public space, while still connecting community members to each other, to the arts, and to the land. An important element of From Weeds We Grow is the inclusion of Indigenous voices and viewing and deepening these relationships to the land and each other through this lens. So over the past few years, we've been honored by the generous contributions of artists and cultural leaders like Lindsey Lickers, who's here with us today, Mishkiki Nibikwe. And so today on National Indigenous Peoples Day, we're going to explore the teachings of the strawberry, which is called the heartberry by many Indigenous nations, through knowledge sharing and truth telling. Later, these teachings will form the basis for an in-park beading circle with Lindsey in Roundtree Mills Park near the Humber River. So our session today has been made possible through the generous support from the New Horizons for Seniors program, which is run by the federal government and the Ontario Arts Council. And we're also grateful for our community collaborators, Park People, and the Rexdale Community Hub. Now, before we introduce our knowledge sharers for today, I like to take a moment to acknowledge the land in which our conversation is rooted. So it's been a site of human activity for 15,000 years, and the territories include the Huron-Wendat, the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and the Métis Nation. This territory is the subject of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement between the Iroquois Confederacy and Confederacy of the Ojibwe and allied nations to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes, taking only what is needed and ensuring that this dish is never left empty for others. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit, who are the treaty signatories, and the Williams Treaty, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. Today, this meeting place of Tekaronto is the home to a large, active, and diverse urban Indigenous community from many nations across Turtle Island. And we're very grateful to use this land to share ideas and generate creativity. Just as a personal note, whenever I share a land acknowledgement, I'm reminded of a conversation with Lindsey a few years back, in which I was reminded that we are all treaty people, whether settlers over generations or as newcomers. And these agreements, these treaties, carry weight and an obligation for all of us. And it's my hope, personally, that knowledge sharing sessions like this one will bring us closer to reconciliation with Indigenous communities and nations and help us decolonize both our own minds and practices. Now, as a public arts organization, we at Steps recognize our privilege in working on stolen and unceded lands, and we're working to unlearn these colonial structures and move towards reconciliation. In the chat, you'll see that my colleague Andrea will be sharing a link to native-land.ca. Now, this is a great starting point, okay? It can help learn about traditional Indigenous territories we currently reside in, as well as treaties, historical and current communities, and languages. As I mentioned, it's only a starting point, but we do have to start somewhere. So we encourage everyone to learn about the lands we call home and about the Indigenous communities we share this land with today. Once again, we're grateful to all those that came before us. I do have one more piece that I'd like to share. Now, at Steps, we have something we've started referring to as a safer spaces statement. And this is because we strive to create safer spaces in our shared world where artists and communities can co-create meaningful, welcoming, and safe public spaces. So as an organization committed to supporting these communities to activate public space by leveraging the power of the arts to raise awareness about inequalities in our cities. This involves continuing to listen, learn, and identify ways to actively address and dismantle racist and exclusionary systems through our work. We really hope everyone has a great experience when engaging with this opportunity today. So we really need to work together to make that happen. I kindly ask that you treat our team, Lindsey, Kelly, and Melissa, and other participants with respect and kindness. And please note that discrimination, harassment, abuse, or any sort of violent, whether emotional or physical behavior, will not be tolerated under any circumstances. And I have my tech whiz Crudy here, who is more than capable of ejecting anyone who's unable to follow those rules. Speaking of Crudy, I'll hand it to her now to talk a little bit about the Zoom housekeeping.
Thanks, Emma. So hi, everyone. I'm Kriti, and I'm the main tech support for this workshop. I'd like to go over some Zoom housekeeping before we start the session. Please keep your mics muted if you're not sharing or asking a question. If you do have any questions or comments about the talk, feel free to pop it into the chat during the meeting, and there will be time for a Q&A session at the end. If you have any questions regarding tech support, you can send me a direct chat. This session is being recorded for archival and reference purposes, and the recording will also be available on our video platforms afterwards. Again, closed captioning is available for the session. You can enable the live transcript option on your Zoom toolbar at the bottom for subtitle settings. And as mentioned earlier, we endeavor to create a safe and welcoming space, whether it be in person or online. So let's do our best to listen and share our opinions in constructive and respectful ways. Thank you, and I'll pass it back to Emma to introduce our amazing speakers for today.
That's great, Crudy, thank you. So I am introducing our knowledge sharers today. We're joined by three, but I do want to preface this by stating that I am still learning, so I may mispronounce some of these traditional words, but I do think it's important for us to try to incorporate these languages as best we can. So today we're joined by three Oshkabewis, who are ceremonial helpers and members of the Wayeshadewin collective. Now, this collective is a grassroots community-led group of these ceremonial helpers supporting urban Indigenous communities in accessing holistic land-based programming to help promote individual and communal health. They strive to create safer, equitable cultural spaces by removing barriers to healing and increasing opportunities for connection and reconnection to land, culture, and ceremony to balance each aspect of personal health, that being mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. With us today is Kelly Lavallee, Melissa Stevenson, and Lindsey Lickers. Kelly is an Anishinaabe Métis Kwe, a member of the Métis Nation of Ontario, and she sits with the Deer Clan and brings forth kindness, love, and truth in all spaces she occupies. Kelly's been working frontline with urban Indigenous youth for over a decade and currently designs and coordinates land-based programming and operates a private counseling service. Melissa is an Anishinaabe Cree Kwe from Oshkabewis First Nation in northern Manitoba. She sits with Bear Clan and is a mom to three amazing little boys who are her world. All roles she feels very much define who she is and who she claims to be, or aims to be, excuse me. Melissa is a registered nurse who has worked the entirety of her career within the urban Indigenous community in the Greater Toronto Area. She worked for the local Indigenous Community Health Center for 10 years and then for 2 years in a policy and advisory role within a public health unit, to now working in post-secondary education. And Lindsey, I've had the pleasure of knowing for a few years now, and she is, and I'm gonna mess this up, but I'm gonna try, Ungwe Hunwe Anishinaabe, also known as Ojibwe Mississaugas, artist and community developer, originally from Six Nations of the Grand River. She has ancestral roots with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and specializes in painting and beading, as well as Indigenous arts and culture facilitation, governance, and community program development. Her traditional name is Mushkiki Nibi, which translates to medicine water. As Christy mentioned earlier, we will hold space at the end for questions, but you can feel free to add those in the chat as they pop into your mind, and we'll circle back at the end of the sharing session just to address all of those questions. So we're super grateful and excited to hear these perspectives. I invite you to please give them a warm virtual welcome. I'm going to pass it on to Lindsey to take it away.
Okay, Ani Bonjour Sego. Normally I do like a big introduction, but Emma did such a fabulous job. But otherwise, I will just say, go by Mushkiki Nebe, Medicine Water, Turtle Clan, and as was said, I'm currently speaking to you from Six Nations of the Grand River. And once again, this year, very privileged to be part of the From Weeds We Grow programming, and the opportunity to bring together my sisters along with me in this part of the journey to share some information on June 21st today. Yes, we have the National Indigenous Day, but also this is the solstice. So everybody can celebrate and welcome to summer, right? Welcome to the time when life is at its fullest. Things are 100% in bloom. All of the, this essentially the way that I was taught was this time is the time where creation shows us just how much they love us. They show us all the time, but this is where we really get to see the love, not just feel it. So this is a really exciting time. And just before this time, earlier in June, we were right around the time of the strawberry moon. And this was a time, and for a lot of different nations, we're going to hear from a couple different perspectives on what that significance is of that moon, but also of the berry itself. I have a little bushel here, little basket. Every time I see these, I see them in this, you know, we have the privilege of going to a store, but it used to be you would have to go to the bush to find these. If you happen to be near, you know, some forests and want to go and take a walk and look for them, they're really small, you know, the wild strawberries, you're encouraged to do that. Because if we don't do that, what ends up happening and what could potentially happen is they won't come out because we're not looking for them. We're not giving them the attention. And so that's something that I wanted to communicate to everybody is if you do have the opportunity to go and pick them. They want to be picked. They want to be eaten. They want to bring that medicine to you. So don't be shy. Because I know sometimes people will say, don't pick the whole thing, right? Don't pick the whole bushel. You gotta be generous and of course, you know, give thanks and give gratitude. If you can, give a little tobacco before you take it. But the whole point of the medicine is that it wants to be shared. It wants to pass that gratitude and that love to you. So one of the things, so I'm gonna start first, if that's okay with my sisters, and then I'll pass it on. Also acknowledging that we have such a short period of time. So these stories that we're gonna share, you know, we could spend a long time talking about them and just the nature of Indigenous story and storytelling. You know, that's what we do most times. We do it all the time, but the biggest time we do it is in the winter time. And because we have a lot of time on our hands, right? We're resting, but we're also making sure that we're telling stories and remembering where we came from and preparing for all of the work that's going to come once winter's done, once the spring comes. So I'm going to tell you one perspective of the heartberry as it comes from the Ongwahongwe people. So that's you may know the Ongwahongwe as the Haudenosaunee, right? The Six Nations. That's those people. The Ongwahongwe is kind of the name that we say and what spirit recognizes us as, Ongwahongwe. And what that's actually talking about is how we walk on the earth, how we relate to one another, and that original connection to creation. It's not just that, but that's a very high level of what that means. So, and I'm also going to share with you some of the learnings that I had of how this all connects, right? Because we talk about these stories, but one thing that we always, and a lot of times we forget, is that they're very relevant to now. And they're very relevant on everybody's individual journeys, right? So I'm going to just show you one way of how that relates. So the belief for the heartberry, for the Ongwahongwe people in particular, is connected to our creation story. Now, every nation has a creation story. Even your own nation of people, wherever it is that you're coming from, you're going to have an origin story that's connected to the land base of which you come from. I know some people will say, well, I don't know, my ancestors never shared that with me. So I don't know if I have one. I guarantee you have one, because we're all people of this earth, right? And there's a reason why we were planted in the areas that we were planted with the origin stories we have. Again, that could be a whole other series of workshops to talk about that and how we're all connected in that way. But that's just, I wanted to make sure that you all knew, you know, you don't need to feel left out because there is a creation story for you. So the Ongohoe, I'm going to go all the way back. So this is before the creation of the earth and Turtle Island, of which we know it as. So in Ongohoe beliefs, we have a belief based on the creation story that we are actually a people of the stars. And the reason why we are the people of the stars is because of how, you know, something like the berry, how the heart berry got here is a big part of that. That gives us evidence and an inkling into how we're connected to the stars. So we go back to that time. So it's said in the story that, I'm going to give you such a condensed version. They've popped in the chat a longer version, and that's not even a long version. That's even a condensed version. The actual recital of the creation story takes a whole week in ceremony. So just to give you a sense of how involved these stories are. So the first aspect of it is after, not where creation resides, but creation having created the star nation, right? And the sky people. So in this time, this was the earth as we know it was completely water. There was no land base yet. So in Sky World, there was something in the middle of the community called the celestial tree. Has anybody ever heard of the tree of life? I know that there's the tree of life in a lot of other nation stories. So we had in our story one of these trees. And on that tree, it had, you know, it was basically a tree of abundance. It served all of the needs of nourishment for that community of people. And however, it was told in the community that you couldn't take too much from it. And one of the things that they always said is that they didn't want you to dig the roots. And so there, and again, too, I want to acknowledge there's like so many variations of the creation story from the Ongohoe people. So I'm just telling you one that resonates the most with me, okay? I've heard so many versions of it. So there goes to a time where there was a woman and she was pregnant. She was with child. And we know from, you know, many, many centuries of women have birthing babies and being pregnant, carrying, you know, being those life givers, that sometimes we get crazy cravings, right? A common one is ice cream and pickles. So not so different in Sky World. This woman had a craving, but she was craving something very specific, and it came from the tree of life. And so she told her husband this, and it was an overwhelming thing for her. She was having visions about it. She was tasting it, right? And she really needed it because she was feeling as if she didn't get it, she might be sick. She might become ill. So being a good provider, right, with that warrior spirit, her husband said, okay, I'm going to go and get this for you. So he went off on his way. There's the one version says he left and he didn't come back, right? And then another version says he comes back, but this time he said he couldn't get what it was she was looking for. So the one I resonate the most with is that he doesn't come back. And so she goes to look for him. And when she goes to look for him, she realizes there's a hole at the bottom of the tree. So we can kind of assume what could have happened, right? So she's looking for her husband. So she bends down to go and look into that hole, and she sees a light pulsating from it. So she sticks her head down further. All she can see is blue. That's all she can see. She can't see anything else. So she goes, and eventually she goes too far and she falls. But, you know, what do we do when we fall, right? We try to grab onto something. You know, we try to catch our fall. So it's said in this legend that she did that, and she grabbed onto the roots of the tree and around the base of it. She falls. And as she's falling, the animal brothers and sisters are watching her way up top. They notice something falling from the sky, and they've never seen it before. So they're all talking amongst themselves. Oh, what is this? It doesn't appear that it's a bird because it can't fly. It's just falling. So we have some of the investigators from the Flying Nation. They go up to take a look and they realize it's a human. At the time, they didn't know what that was called, but they knew it was different from them. So they went back down. We need to come up with a plan. We need to come up with a plan. So one of the plans was for Turtle, right, to rise up and for them to place the sky woman who's falling onto the back of the turtle. So depending on, again, the story, it's different nations of the flying nations, different people that different ones that will come. Mine, the one that I resonate the most with, is the geese. And so the geese corralled together, they stuck their feathers together to create kind of like a bed. So they caught her and then they lowered her down slowly and softly onto the back of the turtle. And again, what does that remind us of? Why did we say we're on Turtle Island, right? So there's another layer there too, lots of layers to our stories. And once she was there, there's a whole period of time that goes in between. But one of the things that she realized when she woke up is, I'm surrounded by water. I can't sustain myself on water. I need to eat. I need to have, earth to enable and in order to nourish myself and grow and sustain myself. So again, depends on the story, which version you're going by. But I always go by the otter is the one who dove deep into the ground because of a story from his grandparents that there was earth at the bottom of the water, right? He's like, I remember an old tale, my grandfather telling me that there was dirt down there. I'm going to go get it. I'm going to go get some. So he comes up and in his little paw, he has a little bit of dirt from the bottom of the water. Some versions he passes away. Some versions he's resuscitated. But the main piece is that Sky Woman then took that dirt, placed it on top of the turtle's back, and then that became Turtle Island. And one thing she noticed when she had fallen and kind of come out of shock was that when she grabbed onto the roots and the base of the tree, in her hand, she had two things. She had Oyanka Onwe, which is tobacco, or asema in Ojibwe, right? Tobacco. But she also had something else in her hand. Strawberries. The seeds and the roots, right? So she placed those things on the back and that became her connection and her nourishment in the physical. And then the tobacco, I don't have any handy on me, but the tobacco became the sustenance and nourishment for her from the spiritual aspect. So one became of the home, which is us now, right? Physical plane, and then spirit time. So in a lot of our ceremonies, we acknowledge duality, above and below. So a lot of the stories are attached to how we do things now while we're here on the Earth Walk. So I'm going to get into why this is so important, and I'm trying to be mindful of time here. But I'm going to share my screen. Can you see the screen?
You're great, Lindsay.
Okay. So that's how you say strawberry in Mohawk, and then underneath is Ojibwe. I'm not going to spend too much time in the language here, but I want you to take a look at the actual plant. So what I think is really amazing here, and just for funsies, I'm just going to share something that I was told a few days ago, actually. So has anybody ever thought about the fact that the berry, the strawberry itself, is not necessarily classified as a fruit? It's not necessarily classified as a vegetable. It's one of those things that's always stumped biology, right? Of like, where did this come from? So there's actually reports now, and you can Google it and find it out, but there's actual reports that the strawberry has similar organic makeup of stardust. So they're actually discovering this. And another piece that is a new discovery is that there's a point in space, which I'll talk about, but that NASA has discovered that the smell that is emitted at a particular point in the cosmos has the same smell as if you were to take a big bushel of strawberries and sniff deeply. It smells like strawberries. So that just shows you, you know, we're starting to catch up to this knowledge, right? But what this actually has to do with is that, yes, it's for the people, right? It's to nourish the people, all people, but it has a particular important connection to the women, because Sky Woman is the one who brought it here, right? It was Sky Woman who was craving that medicine. And again, I know my sisters will probably talk about maybe the shapes and things of the berry, but what I really want to get you in this thought process of is for the Onkohowe, we really use the strawberry as women's medicine, because if you look at this diagram of the plant itself, yes, it has the main flower, but also you can see it, the runner at the bottom here. And what it says there next to it is that all of the offspring of that plant is a daughter plant. So what this actually speaks to us and gives us an indication of is how we have set up our communities as matriarchies, matrilineal. So, and that goes for everybody, not just women, because in our DNA, you can always trace it back. You can always trace everybody back to their mother, right? So that's why for Onkohowe people, it's this berry is seen as the leader of the berries. And that is also reflective of why the women are the leaders of our communities, because they carry that matrilineal line. They carry that connection to creation in that way. And so really, it's actually said in our teachings that any woman, not just me as an Onkohowe woman, but as well as my Anishinaabe sisters, as my Cree sisters, as you know, everybody, any other, you know, women, life givers, seed carriers, a seed, right? You have the seeds on outside of the strawberry. The seed carriers are actually believed to be direct relatives of Sky Woman herself. So that's how sacred and special it is to be a life giver, right? And I'm gonna just move forward here. The other piece is, if you look here, look at how, if anybody's ever seen a wild strawberry bush, the strawberries hang off kind of like an umbrella. They kind of swoop over. They're very close to the ground, but they have this kind of, you know, slumped over look. And there's the, you know, we have the top of the berry, the green, that's kind of like that fuzzy, frilly stuff. And also the seeds, right? When you compare them next to each other, they actually look very similar to the fembree and the ovary. And in the ovary, we also have, you know, all of the eggs, right? Similarly to the seeds. And also on the strawberry, it talks about balance, because if you look back to the strawberry, you even see, if you were to look really closely at the seeds on the outside, they actually similarly look in the shape of sperm. So we have that masculine, that feminine balance, right? So yeah, there's a lot of connection there in terms of how we, even in our bodies, have replicated that medicine. Now, moving into this, so this is the Milky Way. And this, again, we could do a whole other series just on workshops and talking stories about Milky Way. But essentially for the Onkohowe people, this to us is seen as, in Ojibwe, actually, it's called Mushkikim Mikdana, and that translates to, it's basically like a medicine path for spirit. So what that actually, and then it's a similar thing in Onkohowe language too. It's talking basically that space is the trail that we travel from Sky World when we decide to come here and incarnate in the earth. That's all in the stories. And so what I told you earlier about where NASA is discovering that place that smells like the berries, it's that's what they're discovering, is that the Milky Way actually smells like berries, right? So I'll just stop here. So moving into how does this apply to today, right? So I'm going to share something with you. I'd say it was about 2019. I had been in a relationship that was not good for me, right? And I decided to, you know, stand up for myself and invest in myself and give that love to myself and to leave, right? And in that process, I'd say maybe 2021, I was really, really deep in grief. And I was having a really hard time in terms of being here, right? I really wanted to go home because I'd had many vision of home, of the Sky Nation, and you know the community there, and it's just very comforting. So I was struggling, having a hard time trying to be here. So I did ceremony for myself, and I asked creation, why do we feel this way? What is the point of grief? And what do I do to fix it? Like, what is it I need to do to take care of myself that I can stay, that'll help me stay here, right? So I had slept. I had some time there where I had actually put my dog in boarding because my dog was the one keeping me up and going. Put my dog in boarding and I slept for a good 2 days. And when I was sleeping, I had vision. And what I had was vision of the strawberry. So I was, you know, asked, I went along that trail, and it's no word of a lie, right? These are confirmed by these teachings. Even after the fact, I continue to get more teachings about this, of things I didn't necessarily know until, you know, everything's kind of falling into place now of how this is all connected. But I had, you know, the dream of traveling that trail of spirit, right? Of that pathway. And they're right. It was lined with berries. And another thing that it really smelled like was lavender. It was a very, very comforting journey. But I went up, and that's what they showed me. That's what spirit showed me. They said, if you want to know, well, first thing is grief, right? The reason why we have grief, or why you feel grief so deeply, is because of your capacity to feel love. Because if you don't have a capacity to feel love, you don't grieve. You don't grieve in the same way. You don't grieve as deeply. So it's proof that you have the capacity, and it's proof that you did love. So if anything, what needs to happen is our acknowledgement of our bravery, acknowledgement of our compassion, acknowledgement of our capacity, and our acknowledgement that we're made in the likeness of creation. And I said, so what's the point of grieving? Like, why do we really grieve, right? Like, I mean, I understand that, but why? And, you know, creation is the one that told me. The reason why people, right? The reason why Sky Woman went to that space in the first place, the reason why the earth was made, the reason why we were created as people was because creation, we have to remember that creation was all by itself. So we were created from that space of having so much love that creation needed to put it somewhere. So that's why we were created. And that is also why we feel things as deeply as creation and creator does, right? And they told me, I say they because that's my experience of creation, is not a gendered thing. It's bigger than that, right? It's all encompassing. So the best language I have to describe it is they, right? And what they showed me, if you want to know the quickest and the way that we left for you to mend that heart, because it's a broken heart, it's a cracked open heart when you grieve. The best way and the fastest way to support yourself in that, eat the berry. That is how you mend your heart. And if we look at the actual scientific properties of the heartberry, it cleans our blood. It helps with detoxifying our systems. It's full of potassium, calcium, so it also is full of like nourishing vitamins to help us, give us energy. But the main thing is that blood, right? Because the blood is that life force energy that's within us all. So if you're ever feeling stagnancy, you turn to the heartberry, and especially so for women. And they also told me and reminded me that especially if you're dealing with grief, when you're eating it, a lot of people have the tendency to pop the green off on the top. But in ceremony, and this is funny because I had known this for many years, going to ceremony and being told by the old ones and the healers, you eat the whole thing. You don't take the green off of it. And I never understood why. I'm like, why? No, how come nobody will tell me why? And when I asked creation in that vision, I said, why do you eat the green? And that's what they said. Don't forget to eat the green, because the green is a bit bitter. If anybody's ever had this top, it's a bit bitter, right? And then the rest of it is sweet. But we have to be able to eat the whole thing. It's good medicine because it allows us to not only take love with its sweetness, but also for its bitter sweetness, because that's all part of the process, right? If we leave that out, then we're kind of missing the full experience of love. Okay. So I'm going to stop there. I could keep going and going and going, but I'm going to pass it to my sisters and we'll hear a bit of a different perspective. Okay. Now, miigwech.
I guess I'll go, Melissa. What a beautiful story, Lindsey. So, you know, I knew I was kind of going to go second. I've had that feeling. So I was sitting here and I'm thinking, I'm like, how am I going to top that? But you know what? Everything that you said really resonates with me. And I have similar stories. First and foremost, I just want to say, Ani, buju kanabala bit mekanakwe. Meme Gopamashi and Dishnaka, Wishkizia Dodam, Innisville Nindojman, Shnabe Metikwe, in Dao. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for coming and joining us today and sharing space. My spirit name is Sitting Turtle Woman, and my new name that I just got, that I just received, is Meme Gopamashi, which means butterfly gliding. And, you know, I'm so grateful for my journey. I really am. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my own journey and how I come to sit here today, and actually how that heartberry, that medicine allowed me to really heal and sit here in this just like abundance of love and acceptance and forgiveness and fierceness. Like, I don't even know if that's a word, but you know, like just my power as a woman and as a life giver. And you know what, I just want to say, like, I love these two women that I'm sitting here with today. They've really helped me in my journey, and I continue to learn from them because I was never raised with my culture. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know who I was, and I've been on a journey, and it's been about 10 years now. And I'm finally good. Finally, right? I'm finally good. I'm finally in a place where I can love myself, but it took a long, long time. So I'm going to show an image. Just I want everybody to kind of see that. Hopefully I have it up here. Oh. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, probably everything else that I have too. Oh. So that's a tattoo that I just got this month. It's nice and still fresh. It's you know, it's still itchy. So I got it done, and it kind of talks about right here, that's spirit, supposed to resemble spirit, and then spirit planted that seed. There's the roots of that berry, and then it's coming out, and here's that heart medicine that came out. And similar to the stories that Lindsey was talking about, that's why I was like, oh, perfect, because that's exactly what it is. My teachings vary for the heartberry. I've heard so many different variations, but the story that really stuck to me, I'm gonna stop sharing. The story that really stuck with me was the story of the two brothers. And there's lots of different variations. So this is the one that I know and that I really, really liked. It was a good one. And it just resonated with me so much. So two brothers, they left and they went out to the bush and they were play fighting, you know, and the one brother, he pushed his brother and the brother fell and he hit his head and he ended up dying. The brother didn't know what to do. He couldn't fathom going home and telling his mom what had happened because it was an accident. He didn't mean to do that. And so he was also a kid and he didn't know. So he did whatever he had to do in that moment. And he buried his brother in this place. And he went back home and he told his mom a lie, said, I don't know what happened. He went off and he never came back. And so years go by, and, you know, the brother is just full of guilt, full of anger, resentment, like literally hated himself for what he had done, was never able to forgive himself, and, you know, looked at his mom. His mom just had no closure, never knew. Mom sat there and waited for her boy to come home, and he sat there and he knew that he was never going to come home. And so every year on the anniversary of the day that his brother died, he went and to the place that he buried his brother. And then one year there was this beautiful bush, strawberry bush and whatnot. And it was kind of odd. He was like, oh, what's this? And he ate one of the berries, and it was sweet. It was sweet. It made him feel good, a little different. Then his brother came to visit him and said, I gave you that. That's my gift to you. It's what they call the heartberry. It's going to heal your heart. It's going to help you let go of that grief. It's going to help you let go of that anger, and help you forgive yourself. And the brother told him and said, you know, I'm in a good place. I'm back home. It's pure love here, and you need to live your life, and you need to stop holding on to all this anger. I'm good. I need you to be good. And so when I heard that story, you know, I heard it a long time ago, and it never really sat with me until I started on my own journey, just similar to what Lindsey was saying. I was in a really abusive relationship for a very long time, like 9 years too long, you know? And I hated myself. I was working in community. I was doing, you know, I had to be out there, but I felt like an imposter, really. Like I was like doing all this work, right? Like I'm trying to work with youth and doing all this stuff, but deep down, like I'm guiding people in their journeys on self-discovery and self-love and worth, and yet I could barely do it myself. Like I was stuck for so long. It's just, you know, it made me really, really sick. And I allowed things to happen. I allowed bad things in because I felt that that's all I deserved. Now I'm a mom of 2 boys, and so, you know, I really, that's my heart medicine right there as well. And, you know, as I got stronger and as I gained these teachings, and, you know, I kind of was out there, and I left my ex-partner, which is the father of my kids, in about 2018. I really started to get my power back. It took a long time, but I made that commitment. I said, you know what, I'm done. I don't know where I'm going, but I just know I can't stay here anymore. It was, you know, a long time. And so, you know, I continued on my journey. I moved to Toronto. It was still like kind of a codependency, and like, you know, as a helper, I took on a lot of him. Like I took him on because I wanted to help him. But I could barely help myself. And that really impacted my kids. And so then I would hate myself even more, because then I felt guilty. I was like, because I knew, right? Like I knew that I was living in this chapter of my life, and I didn't want to be there, and I wanted so hard to get away from it. And I really did in 2020. COVID hit. 2020 was the best year of my life. Like everybody's like, oh my God, we're in like a pandemic, and I'm living my best life over here. I felt so free, because that's when I was able to really walk away. I got my power back. I walked and I said, I'm done. I'm done with, you know, anything that you have over me. I don't want it anymore. And I left him, and I still struggled being a single mom. It was hard. And then we're in COVID, you know, that was even harder. And so I barely was keeping my head above water. But I managed to do that. And meanwhile, like I'm still getting all these teachings, like I'm working alongside, you know, a lot of elders and people with a lot of knowledge. And, you know, I'll say what you know, if you would have told me 5 years ago that I would be here, I would have said, no way, absolutely not. But every day that went by, a new blessing happened. Something happened that really just guided me to get back to that, you know, Bamatsawin, that good life. You know, even though there was times where I wanted to just call them just to like watch the kids so I can write a paper, because I was right in the middle of my my bachelor's. Like I banged out my BSW during COVID, and then in 2021 I was like, well, I might as well keep going and I'll do my master's. But then in October 13th, when it was my son's birthday, he was turning 5, 2021, I was assaulted in my driveway. Even though I had left him, he still had some power over me, you know, some control, and he came, and I'll tell you, it's like time stopped. When he was coming at me, time stopped, and I allowed him to do that. And that was the last time I ever allowed anything bad to happen to me ever again. That's the day I really got my power, because that was the day I really held him accountable for what he did to me and what he continues to do. Today, I can sit here and say I no longer, I'm good, you know. I took it that day, but it was the best choice for me, because that was the day I really took all the teachings that I've been hearing and I put it all together, and I used that as my strength. I used it as my bundle, and I really just pushed myself through. And I really built a relationship in 2021. Yeah, it was like that year, 2021 to 2022, when I graduated. In the year that I was doing my master's, I healed myself. And I did that through using my medicines, ceremony, connection to land. I sat with these two girls in training, and then we just developed Oshkabewis, like right there. So many amazing things started happening. And I firmly, you guys can probably hear that background noise. I'm sorry. No, you're good? Maybe it's just me. I can hear it. It's very loud in my head. But that's when I was able to really understand how important that medicine is. I used to go down to the water and cry and eat strawberries. I ate strawberries like nonstop, because you know, I kept hearing, you know, that heartberry, it's going to heal your heart. It's going to heal your heart. And I think it does. It does, like it did for me. And I continue to do that. And everything that Lindsey was talking about, it's like that relationship. So when I got this tattoo, that symbolizes the relationship to self. Because that was, that symbolizes how I've come to forgive myself. You know, when we hear about that heartberry and like that story, I was thinking about that story, and I'm like, yeah, I've done it. I was able to forgive myself and remind myself that it's okay. You know, people go through stuff. It's not what I did yesterday. It's what I'm doing today and what I'm going to do tomorrow. So this tattoo just reminds me to love myself every day. It reminds me of how I've forgiven myself and I've allowed good things to happen. Knock on wood, but I don't think anything bad, like nothing can get me now, you know. I'm just really, I'm like at the greatest, like I'm at the strongest point of my life. I've never been doing this good. My health is well, my mind, my spirit. Like I'm literally, yeah, she puts a fire there, because like that fire within me is burning so strong. And like I owe it to that heart medicine. I owe it to those stories. I owe it to our ancestors. You know, my mom passed away 10 years ago. She passed away from a methadone overdose. And currently, I'm designing land-based trauma and addiction programs, and I'm getting people off methadone by sweating them. I'm using like ceremony, community, connection to really heal people. Like, this is amazing. I can't even make this stuff up. The opportunities that have come my way when I really put myself first and really understood my power. I feel like I'm living in a dream. I used to wake up every day and I just didn't even want to, like Lindsey, I didn't want to be here. I wanted to go home. I said, I'm like, please let me go home. I'm probably not going home till I'm 105 now. Okay, just because, you know, like Creator's got a plan for me. And now that I finally have found my path, I don't want to go home anymore. I want to stay here because I know my work here is changing lives, and it's going to change the generations to come. But it's also changing the 7 generations that came before me. I'm healing my grandma. I'm healing my nana. I'm healing everybody, you know, just by the work that I'm doing. I'm planting those seeds with my boys. I'll tell you, my boys will never hit a woman, and they'll always understand the power of a woman. You know, so I'm living proof that, like, we all have the capacity within to heal ourselves. We just got to allow it to happen. And we got to see the beauty of what was given to us. You know, they say that, you know, the berry was given to us as a gift. It was the first sweet thing. And like, as Lindsey talks about it, that was the first sweet thing that was given to us. And what a sweet thing it was. When I'm sad, I eat strawberries. When I'm happy, I eat strawberries all the time. Like, I always have berries in my house. And now when I go up north, I'm leaving soon, and we're going to go pick berries, make jam, like, you know, and so now I get to sit there with these people and teach them about that medicine as well. Help them pull that medicine. We have so much medicine within us. You know, it's just about pulling it out. And, you know, for my entire master's, I grounded all of my research in Indigenous knowledges, and I talk about spirit injury. So my theory, and like many others, like, this isn't a new theory that I've just developed. Like, this is something that's been out there. It's just something that I've pushed forward because I really firmly believe, you know, when you heal your spirit heals your heart and your mind. And how do we do that? We heal our spirits through feeding our spirits. You know, and we feed the spirits with the berries when we do ceremony. You know, we feed our spirits when we smudge. We feed our spirits when we go and offer our tobacco to the water or to the fire. So yeah, that's like my story about my relationship with berries. I could go on and on and on, you know, but I'm really, I can't thank Creator enough. I can't thank my mom, my ancestors, my sisters here far and wide, for all the love and the guidance and the connection that I feel. So, and you know, I wish that for each and every one of you, everybody that's sitting in this Zoom room here, you know, I hope that you feel that. So, with lots of love, Melissa, you're up.
Wow, lots to follow, but you want to know what I think? The amazing part one is just how our stories can connect so easily. So having heard from my beautiful sister, Lindsey, those grounded teachings, those traditions, again, I always look at her in that space. She's just so beautiful when she shares those words. It's medicine, right? It really is. Feeds my heart so often. And then, you know, continuing to hear the words of medicine coming from my sister Kelly here, just really sharing about the practical application of like overcoming and just, you know, being able to really understand what it is to heal your heart and what it can give you in life. And again, as I look at, like, you know, when I reflected on what my connection was to the heartberry, to the strawberry, you know, like a lot of our stories, I grew up off reserve for my entire life. My mother had me at 17 and kind of saw a cycle on the reserve, and so decided to move us away from my home community because she wanted me to have a different life. And so when you move away, you lose out parts, right? You lose community, you lose connection, you lose culture. And so I would say, though I didn't grow up around it, I spent a lot of time in the woods. Man, did I ever spend a lot of time picking berries young, like 4, 5, 6. Again, I will say having children in the 80s was very different than it is now. Again, I remember being 4 or 5 years old and being told, stay home, don't go outside. And what did we do? We'd stay home and not go outside, right? Because everyone had to go to work. But I spent a lot of time in the woods, and I spent a lot of time picking berries, looking for those wild strawberries, right? Looking for those red vines, because as soon as you can find some of those vines, you're going to find the plant, right? And I would always follow them. And then I would just sit out there and eat, right? You didn't necessarily get snacks either as a kid, so you went and fed yourself. So though I know I didn't grow up always hearing those beautiful teachings like Lindsey carries in my younger years, I know my connection was still present. It was just in a different way, you know. That heartberry and that connection to the land was always calling me, and is always a part of who I am and the work that I've done. And so, you know, when I became a nurse, I always knew I was going to be a nurse. My grandmother was a nurse. She was the center of our universe. She had 13 children. I always joke that it must have been really cold Manitoba winters because that's a lot of children, but she had 13 of them, and she was just the center of everyone's world. My grandfather was, they both were residential school survivors, but my grandfather got tuberculosis and was in the Indian hospital and passed away very young, in his 30s. But my grandmother after that was like, what do I do? And so she became a nurse. And I remember always looking at my grandmother, this strong, fierce woman that just really is able to lead a very large group of crazy people, because I love my family and we will all have stories that they're all a little wild and crazy. You know, those aunties are definitely very interesting, but very loving. And so, yeah, knowing that I always knew I was going to be a nurse, I knew I was going to be a helper. And so I wanted to be like her. So that's why I went into nursing. And so when I finished nursing here in Toronto, I went into work with community and working in diabetes education. And working in diabetes, I talked a lot about food as a medicine, right? Like understanding what that is. And so those are the questions I used to ask healers all the time is, you know, what tools do you use to have conversations with your clients? And that's what these teachings are, right? They're all tools to help us explain the direction that we need to be considering, the way that we need to move forward, you know, really understanding there's so much in that heartberry teaching. Again, it teaches, you know, a lot about relationship and connection, knowing, again, these plants are all connected. You know, Lindsey shared that beautiful picture to start about. And I didn't realize that they were all daughters, but I love that even more about that important relationship of you know, sisterhood, of love and connection to it all. So, you know, it really helps ground why this is so important. Even looking at what the strawberry moon is, again, really represents this understanding of relationships and navigating what is serving you and what letting go of what is not. But also, you know, in talking to healers and asking them, like, how do you talk to someone that's living with diabetes, and how do you get them engaged in their health? And they talk one of the first ones I heard stories about was the heartberry. And again, because the heartberry can be used to replicate explaining the cardiovascular system, explaining the heart, explaining how it's all connected because of those veins and those pieces that and helping to describe that to clients. And again, I've heard many stories about the plant medicine. Again, it is my understanding of our roles and responsibilities here on this earth is to take care of this land. And in reciprocity to that, the land will take care of us. Again, our relationship is a little strained right now, and we need to remember what our roles and responsibilities are. But knowing that these medicines are out there, these plants have instructions to care for our physical vessel that help help us to live our best life here. Because again, you know, someone shared this with me recently and said that they'd heard it before. You know, we're not humans trying to have a spiritual experience. It's actually the other way around. We're spirit trying to have a human experience. And if you can understand that you're spirit first, you can start to see the world differently. And so again, you know, knowing that this heartberry medicine and knowing how it takes care of this grief, it's really just a clearer indication and understanding of how it brings together that connection of mind, body, spirit, and emotion, and how it's all within our vessels and how we can utilize these tools to really navigate that conversation. I also heard some elders use the strawberry and the fact that the seeds are on the outside of the berry. They're not buried inside. You look at most fruits, it's buried inside. But this strawberry's like, no, man, I'm good. Look at me. I got my seeds on the outside because I know I'm going to continue living. I know I'm going to flourish. I know I'm going to grow. And so it's really important to understand that we don't need to hide, right? We should be truthful on who we are and how we operate in this world, and really just be that good person. And again, this incorporates many other teachings when I think about it, like the grandfather teachings, and just really understanding what those are and how those are guides in our life. But, I really see all of this stuff as different tools to care for these physical vessels, to care for our spirit, first and foremost, and really make those connections. And knowing, I think that's the beauty of bringing this in, I guess, Indigenous stories, perspectives, understandings to the light right now, to have great conversations such as this, folks sitting around and just wanting to learn a little bit more about this amazing fruit that we all, are again, not fruit, not vegetable, but this amazing plant that's really everyone generally loves, and knowing how much medicine that gives us. And it also, when I think of the heartberry, I really think about all those ceremonies that we do. Again, we as a collective have a sweat lodge, and we just celebrated our 1 year on the land. And boy, did we put out an abundant offering that included many berries, but also including the heartberry, and just really offering that reciprocity, that connection to the spirits of that land, that connection to the land, that connection to our helpers, all those pieces. And it's all through these berries and making these connections, because it is that sacred medicine. And again, I think there's just so much to learn, even just looking at a simple plant and looking how it grows and looking how it flourishes, how it supports one another. It's just always a constant reminder of of what we need to be doing in our lives. Again, I think in our history, we got a little away from it, but we also have this opportunity right now. We talk about reconciliation, we talk about this pathway forward together, and this is a part of it, right? I think these stories help us all. And I would also say in me learning different things about different cultures, different religions, different spiritual practices, I really understand that we have a lot of similarities. And it all comes back to the land, and it all comes back to using those tools to care for ourselves in it. And so, there's just so much good reminder for ourselves when we see the heartberry, when we make that connection to that taste and that connection to the stories that Lindsey just shared with us, the beautiful teachings. And it helps to care for our vessels. It helps to care for our spirits, and really brings us forth in a good way, that, again, just really brings everyone back together in this circle, and really helps us move this path forward. Reconciliation, again, I recently was listening to Jody Raybould Wilson's book on reconciliation, and I highly recommend it. But in it, she said, we really need to understand, do you ever reconcile with your abuser? And the answer is no, you walk away. And again, it's important to understand that reconciliation is not about Indigenous people reconciling with the government. It's about Indigenous people reconciling with community that lives here now, with the people that live on this land now. It's about reconciling with ourselves, reconciling with our spirit, reconciling with the land, with our languages, our teachings, all those pieces. So again, all of this conversation that we've had today is all a part of that. And I just offer my deepest gratitude that, you've taken the time to hear these words, because this is a part of that path forward. And again, I think, like I said, though it's identified as a story that has an Indigenous perspective, it's applicable to all communities, right? This medicine is here for us all. And again, it's medicine that's here for us all in this land. And again, I've heard in this area, because we talked about going to pick strawberries, and I heard that they're kind of hard to find. So you gotta, I appreciate Lindsey's reminder of trying to get out there and go pick them so that they can continue to grow, because I remember hearing one Madewin elder say he doesn't know about these frankenberries, that he calls them, because you can get them all year round from different places, right? Like, technically speaking, we only have seasons for so long. And so just really to remind ourselves of the medicine that the berry is, and how lucky we are I guess, you know, to be able to access it all year round, because we bring it from different territories. But, you know, are we still honoring what that medicine is? And so it's always a good reminder to myself of like making those connections. And so, and don't get me wrong, offering the gratitude for the opportunity to have access to it, but reminding that there is always a short window that strawberry is in bloom, and you know, we're able to harvest that fruit, and really being able to appreciate it and put out that offering for it all. So that's all I have to share regarding it. I don't know if I will throw it back to Lindsey or what but miigwech again.
Yeah, miigwech. The only other thing I will say is that I don't know if anybody else has noticed. I've definitely noticed that conversations around the strawberry are like really heightened this year. I've been hearing it way more than it used to be in the previous years. And, you know, I've been pretty, you know, blessed to be sitting and have sat with healers, elders, knowledge keepers, right? And this time is actually in the prophecies, right? Of that we are moving into this space of where we're going to be asked to have more compassion. And that is, again, directly related to the heart. So I don't think it's a coincidence that we're having to talk about these things more and more, especially given what's going on in the world, right? In a lot of different spaces, to the land, between the people, you know, and all of those things. And as we just heard from everybody, right? Like the berry really, yes, it's teaching us about relationships and boundaries and all of these things, right? But I love what Kelly said about that relationship to self, right? Because what that does, if we're getting asked, it's being brought up more and more, it's because we need to pay attention that the medicine is calling us, right? That's basically what it is. The medicine is calling all the people back to it. And I really feel like it actually has to do with a preparedness for the work that's going to need to be done next, right? Because there's healing coming for lots of generations and for a lot of different groups of people, especially, you know, of course, with us. But again, back to the prophecies, is really centering that the women are the ones, right? The women identifying life givers, seed carriers. It's all of those traditions and that knowledge and understanding of why we're here to do what we're doing, how we're to relate to one another, right? And really restoring our communities back to balance. Because I'm going to just put this out here for people to think about. What's been raging right now in and around our communities? Fire, right? Fire. And women in particular, those that are of the feminine energy, were water carriers, right? That's connected to that life-giving energy and those origin stories. So what happens as a counter to out of control fire, right? Uncontained fire is water. So there's a balancing that's going on. And I think the heartberry is connected to that. It's basically like, get more acquainted with this medicine because we're going to have to use it, right? It's not just for us, it's for everybody, right? And I think that's another thing I just wanted to make sure that I'm communicating, and it's communicated here, is that this isn't about saying that one, you know, feminine or masculine, one is more important than the other, but there are protocol and order to why we do things the way that we do them. And ultimately, if we're going to continue to have generations that come after us, right? We talk about 7 generations. Fact of the matter is, if we do not take care of ourselves, and if even, you know, the men in our communities, if they don't take care and help support the women in reclaiming this work, then we're going to have a harder time trying to carry those things on in a healthy way, right? So, and I don't want to speak for other communities, but I know in our own communities, that's a big struggle, right? And so that's what I've been talking to healers and different, you know, I'm privy to have buddies that are healers and seers and medicine people. And that's what everybody's talking about, is that time's now. that we're moving into that time. And the fires are just like a signal that that's initiating that process. And we can look at a whole other slew of things that are happening, right? Control and trying to control women's bodies, for example, trying to control identity, trying to control and continue on the path of capitalism, which is also connected to patriarchy, right? It's all of those things are all converging together. And as Indigenous peoples, that's one of the things and the messages that we're getting in the community is we need to be prepared and recultivate that relationship with the heartberry, because we're all going to need it, because it's going to be heavy heart work that we're moving into. So that's how I'll end with that. And miigwech for the stories and perspectives. I hope everybody got something from this. And also that this is just to note, if you are joining for the In the Park session, I'm going to spend a bit more time diving into some more teachings that go along with the strawberry in person. So where we didn't get to cover everything, and we're never going to be able to cover everything. But that's just so that you know that there's more opportunity to keep learning at that space. So I hope you'll join us. And I'll put it back over to Ima for questions. So miigwech now.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm absorbing a lot here. So
I apologize for yeah.
No, thank you so much. You certainly triggered a lot of thought, reflection, and emotion for me, and I imagine for the rest of our audience as well. Okay. So we wanted to hold a bit of space at the end of the session for anyone who had a few questions or wanted to dive deeper into a particular thing you've heard today. Andrea is here. She's one of my colleagues at STEPS, and she's agreed to help facilitate this question and answer period. Andrea, I'll pass the mic to you.
Thank you, Ima. And thank you again, Lindsey, Kelly, and Melissa. Such beautiful sharings and stories. And thank you for being in this space with us today. So now we'll open it up to everyone who ever has any questions. You may come off mute or pop it into the chat, and I'll read those out loud. And again, these can be questions about anything, about the stories, about individual journeys, about anything that came to mind during this time.
I would say also no pressure, because I know it's a lot of information.
I can kick it off. I think that over the years, I know Lindsey's shared and facilitated so many people who have shared so many teachings, and every time we get together, I'm making these connections between these stories and my own life. And what really struck me is that the Milky Way smells like strawberries. Like, what is that? I don't know how you can deny that connection, but I see Arden's got their hand up, so it was more just a comment than a question. So,
okay, cool. Just before that, another cool thing that's similar to that, Ima, is that scientists have taken a look at human ashes, and they look like the cosmos. Isn't that so cool?
I don't know. My mind is blown right now. I'm losing my words here, but that's very cool.
I guess if it's okay. Thank you all so much for sharing all of your stories. It was beautiful, and I'm so grateful. And I had a question for those who, I think Kelly in particular, because my story really resonates with yours. I've experienced a lot of cultural loss as a settler Indigenous person, and so what has your journey been like, reconnecting with your culture? If you'd like to speak more about it, of course.
I can absolutely. Let me just close my apparently we're having a party on my block. I don't know what's going on. Like, I don't know what these people are doing. Honestly, so much, like, I can do here. What, you know what? I'm gonna tell you something. Okay, so when I went to school, like for my master's, right, and all that happened, I took it as a huge blessing, and I was able to create something like my project, like my school work. I was able to create something that created a foundation for me to do the work that I do. So I don't have like a whole lot of time, but you know, go check out my YouTube page. Go check out, because all of my research, I really dismantled the colonial structure of education and that institution. And I pushed back really hard, and I said, I ain't writing your 60-page paper. Nobody wants to do that ever. Okay, no one. I'm like, so, you know, I really held strong to my oral teachings, and I like ownership, control, access, and possession, right? I was like, nope, to honor this work and the research that I'm doing, I'm going to share all my stories orally. All of them are posted on YouTube. So go check it out, sittingturtle.ca. Okay. But my journey has been, you know, when you can look back, like right now, I can look back and say, I am so grateful for every hardship, every blessing, every punch, every word, every opportunity to sit with an elder, like everything good and bad, you know, because I got like a few teachings when I first started out, right? Like I started working at a community health center, and I was just like immersed into the culture. Like I didn't know what it was like to be Indigenous. I was like, oh my God. And then I got my spirit name. Holy, that was where it started. Because I was just introduced to a piece of myself that I didn't know. Little did I know, all you got to do, so they say, right, is go back to your spirit. You want to know how to forgive, you want to know how to love, you want to know how to like deal with your grief and loss, go ask your spirit to take that stuff away from you. I was like, oh yeah, just that simple, eh? I was like, how would one do that? I'm like, you know. And what I've learned is I just had to build that relationship with self. And like, honestly, like I ended up in spaces that, you know, at the beginning of my day, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm here. I'm not supposed to be here. But by the end of the day, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I have to leave because I'm meant to be here. Right. So just accepting the process and seeing things for what they are. You know, I'm going to tell you, once you like open yourself up to feel that connection, you're going to be okay. Right? Like you have to like, you know, sit there and tell yourself, I deserve this knowledge. I deserve to walk this way. It's my journey. Like I'm going to own it. And you know what? Like, I'm part of the Métis Nation, right? And like, you know, they just passed this bill, great, la-di-da. But you know, I have Anishinaabe roots, but I don't know too much about it. Because my grandmother was adopted, and I don't know where anything, like I can't trace it. Like I know that I can trace my lineage back to like Manitoba, like the Red River and like we're there, but like there's not a lot. With the MNO, like I was able to like definitely like I can prove that I could trace that, and so I went that route. But you know, like when you go to certain places and you just know, like you're like, I don't know, I've never been here before, but I know that I've been here before. Like it's so hard to articulate it in like an experience. It's a feeling. You know, you're going to get those feelings. Okay. So when in my research, what I've learned, and just from my own lived experience, when you get goosebumps, that's spirit. I've literally had goosebumps like most of the time that we've been talking. Right. And you know, I've learned also that your ego sits in your mind and your spirit sits in your heart. Right. And so your first thought usually comes from your heart, but then your ego steps in and, then your second and your third and your fourth thought of self-doubt and, oh no, I shouldn't be doing it this way, or blah, 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 blah. Go with your first thought, your first feeling. Always go with that, because that's your spirit, and your spirit's guiding you. So yeah, I could talk about this for a very long time, but I won't. But my journey has just been full of just, yeah, being in spaces and places and not being able to understand why until you're not going to get instant gratification and be like, yes, I put my tobacco down and now I have a great life. La-di-da. That's not how it works, right? It's like you put your tobacco down just to be grateful to wake up. And you start building a relationship with that tobacco. That's where I would say start. Build that relationship with that tobacco. Build the relationship with the land. Go to the water. Just sit there. Put your feet in the sand. I tell people now, I'm like, my office is the water. Like, we go down to the water. I go to the beach every day. I was just at my office today. It was great. You know, so like, you know, really seeing what we have in front of us and understanding the beauty and understanding that everything happens for a reason. Nothing happens by chance. There's nothing coincidental. We are all supposed to be in this Zoom. We're all supposed to be here. So yeah, with that, miigwech, yeah, go check it out, sittingturtle.ca. All of my stuff's on there. I have this 30-minute YouTube video about my whole journey.
Thank you so much. I'll definitely take a look. I really appreciate it. More than you know, really.
Absolutely. No, I feel you. Lots of love. And also just to let everybody know, I know that there's a fire ban everywhere, but at my house, I have a sacred fire pit and I just light fires whenever I want because I do it in my driveway. So I would like to see somebody tell me to put out my fire today. Go ahead. So I'm going to be lighting a sacred fire and I'm going to be offering this tobacco that I was given, that I was sent out, and I'm going to be putting all my love and all my prayers into that fire for each and every one of you, all of your families, all your loved ones, and everybody, all of creation. I'm full of love and I just want to pass that along. So miigwech.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you. I think we still have time for questions, Ima. Yeah, so
Sure.
yeah, if anyone else has any questions, feel free to, again, use the raise hand function, come off mute, or pop that into the chat.
First of all, I'm so grateful today for, all of you who are here, but Lindsey, Kelly, and Melissa, wow, that was such a connection. I really felt, all of your stories really touched me, and my experiences have been similar. And for the past 3-4 years, what's going on, and, and all the healing work that all women are doing, especially. And I just feel that, I feel the circle, I feel the connection. And yeah, so strawberries, actually, I was eating a lot when I was pregnant too. And I don't know why I started craving and I started eating. So I have that connection with strawberries. We have some wild in the backyard. And yeah, I just don't know. At points I want to cry. I just feel so good. It's just like how Lindsey was saying, our ashes are also like stardust. So I feel Indigenous culture, like my background is I'm from India. I've been living here for 20 years. But I feel all of us, all of us are so connected to the land wherever we are, and we're reclaiming that. So, and when all of us do it, it's becoming so strong. And oh, I'm getting goosebumps now. But yeah, it's getting strong, and I can feel it. And more people I'm meeting, I'm just like, wow, it's like it's just there everywhere. You see signs everywhere. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving us this great knowledge, and for you to keep it going. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I think I could go on all night. This is wonderful. Just sharing the space with you ladies, and then everyone else on the call. It's just I've been getting goosebumps and shivers, and somehow I just really want strawberries now. But you know, we are nearing the end of our session. I do want to share that we're going to have, Andrea is going to share in the chat some connections with Lindsey and Kelly. And I know Lindsey, certainly Lindsey, and it sounds like Kelly too, have been very willing to continue these conversations in the past. So feel free to stay in touch with them. I can speak from my heart where I say, like, I'm just so grateful for the three of you and all of the rest of you. Some of you are my colleagues, some of you we've worked together, some of you I haven't met, and I just think it's such a beautiful, so beautiful when we can come together and share these moments together. Our next From Weeds We Grow opportunity, as I mentioned, will be in the park with Lindsey doing a beading circle. Those of you who have joined us before are familiar with the spot. It's in Roundtree Mills Park, next to the Humber River. This will be on July 8th, and it will be a full day workshop. So we'll start at about 11 a.m. and wrap up at 4:30. We will be holding space for lunch, and we'll provide some snacks, and we'll provide a decent meal, so we can keep our energy up, to keep that creativity up. All the materials will be provided, and it's 100% free, so please don't let cost be a barrier. If you do have any additional support requests or challenges in accessing the space, Andrea is going to share my email in the chat here. You can reach me at ema@stepspublicart.org, and I'm happy to figure out ways to make sure you can participate. No experience is necessary for this session. Novice beaders are welcome. And we've also got, Andrea's also going to share in the chat. I might be throwing things out of order at you, Andrea, and I apologize. Andrea's also shared the blog post and that page for the Heartberry Strengthening Our Connection series, and that page will be updated with the registration once it's been finalized. We do ask for advanced registration for this session, just because we want to make sure we have enough materials and enough food for everyone. But I hope to see you. I hope to see some of you there. And we've got we'll plug in a few of the STEPS website links in our social media and the chat too, in case you want to stay in touch with us. But for me, that's, I feel like we've wrapped up on a pretty good note. I hope you all feel like you've learned something, shared something, and are taking something meaningful away, whether it just be a great story or some guidance on how to put one step in front of the other through these trying times. And once again, I just share the utmost gratitude for Lindsey and her sisters, Kelly and Melissa, for making the time and sharing with us today. And I know I'll see you again, Lindsey, but Melissa and Kelly, I hope to see you. I hope to see you sometime soon, all right? So thank you all so much. My heart is full. So on that note, I'm going to end the session here. Again, if you have any questions, you can, or need any clarification, you can reach me at ema@stepspublicart. That's spelled IMA, and then at stepspublicart.org. And I'll be happy to connect you with any further information I may have, or offer any supports for you to participate fully in our upcoming offerings.